purpose of our talk today is to acknowledge that we're all experts within our own scientific bubbles. We can have a greater impact when we bring our science expertise and ideas to the public. Our speaker today is Dr. Katrine Wallace, or Dr. Kat, if you've seen her on social media. She's a science communicator and an adjunct assistant professor of epidemiology and biostatistics at the UIC School of Public Health. She has a PhD in epidemiology and is a member of several science communication initiatives, such as Team Halo from the United Nations, Project FIDES from the World Health Organization, and the Health Influencer Council from the Public Good Projects organization. She was also chosen as a vaccine luminary for the 2021 G7 Vaccine Competence Summit, which was hosted in the United Kingdom. And due to her public health advocacy work, fighting misinformation on social media, she's also been featured in a number of opinion pieces and has been interviewed and profiled by several global and national mainstream media outlets, including BBC World News, CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, Bloomberg, NPR, and the list goes on. So with that, I'll just give one more reminder. If you could fill out our welcome poll, that would be wonderful. And I will turn it over to Dr. Wallace.
Thank you again so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And putting this talk together was actually a really great opportunity for me because I do a lot of things and I've never kind of put them all together in one place. And so as I was putting this together, it kind of took a long time because as I was doing work, I was like, oh, I should put that in the presentation. Like, I don't even realize all the pieces of everything I do. And oh, by the way, I have a cat here that's very needy. And so I know this isn't very professional, but she broke in here with my closed door. So she's probably going to pop up while I'm talking. Okay, so in this presentation today, we're going to talk about reasons why you might want to go public with your science, how presenting complex topics to lay people is challenging, and I'm going to give tips, and that's probably why you're all here, on what works best on the different social media platforms, because they're not all the same, they have different audiences, etc. And then tips for working with mainstream media, because when you establish yourself on social media, you will be noticed by the mainstream media because, like you, they're always trying to make content as well. So if you are putting yourself out there, they will find you. And lastly, it's really important to kind of overcome, as academics, we all have imposter syndrome. We all think we know less than we really know. And so it's really important to just overcome that and sort of come into yourself and be more self-confident about putting yourself out there with your science. And that's me included. All right, so, and by the way, this presentation is very much from my own perspective. I don't promise to have all the answers on everything, and I'm not like the expert on science communication in general, but this is things that have worked for me over the past like 2.5 years. So I just want to put that in mind. So a lot of this is things that I have personally found work or don't work. So myself personally, although I've had a lot of success as a science communicator, this was completely an accident. I never set out to do this. I actually downloaded TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic for the same reason everybody else did. I was bored during the shutdown and I just needed some entertainment. And so I was just scrolling. And I didn't really have, any motives to become a content creator at all. So as I was scrolling, I started seeing like conspiracy theories on TikTok that COVID was even fake, that it wasn't even real, and that it was just like put together to throw the election, and just wild things like that. So because I'm an epidemiologist and I'm trained in public health science, I was kind of motivated by sort of some weird sense of duty to sort of set the record straight. And naively, I thought that's what I was doing by starting to make content. I thought, oh, I'm just going to fix this problem. So I wasn't alone, though, because during the pandemic, many more people started to come out and create SciComm content. Oops. So just to show you that I'm actually not just a science communicator, I'm actually a real scientist too. So pre-2020, most people who are doing SciComm now were just involved in communicating their own science work. So things that you're more probably used to doing, like going to conferences and presenting, and there's a actual proof that I do that too. Journal articles, writing journal articles, and again, proof that I do that too. And maybe being interviewed, but at the conference, like maybe your abstract or your poster gets highlighted and you get into the conference journal, or maybe on Twitter, your Twitter gets picked up by some press in your field. And so all these things are things as academics that we're used to doing, and also classroom teaching. So these are our ways of doing science communication that we're all very comfortable with, or most of us anyway. So in lay people, we didn't really talk to them too much, right? Because we were all involved, we are all experts in our own little scientific bubbles. So even other scientists didn't really know what we did. And, you know, we all kind of worked in our little silos. And lay people generally were relying on the media, their doctors, and wellness influencers for health information. Oops, keep doing that. Okay. So then 2020 hits, and all of a sudden there's this need, this huge chasm and a need for scientific information. And because in 2020, as you all remember, there's a lot of data flying around, lots of urgency, lots of changing policies, and people didn't really understand why things were changing so fast, why we had to wear masks before, or why we didn't have to wear masks before, and now we have to wear masks, and why did this person say we didn't, and now they're saying we did. And these things weren't really making sense to a lot of people. Debates that usually happen between scientists kind of behind closed doors at universities were now happening out in public, in the media, on Twitter. It was very different. Times had changed. So scientists and non-scientists were engaging in these discourses. So people were entering the discourse that weren't necessarily trained to do so. So then we became engrossed in this whole vortex of politics, opinions, misinformation, and the culture of alternative facts. So scientists and medical professionals kind of had to step up and voluntarily become these critical voices for people, because many voices up to this point that they were used to listening to had become untrustworthy. So what do we mean when we say talking over the fence, the title of this talk? So this was kind of how I envisioned it, right? So all of us are on the left. We're the scientific experts. We have our research areas, we have our grants, we have our publications we're writing, and our collaborations in our labs, and all the things that we're doing to create data, generate data, and publish it to move the science field forward that we're working in. So that's what we're doing all the time. Then there's this big gap before our science gets to lay people, right? So what you're working on now may not get to lay people for 5, 10, maybe more years, right? So what happens in the middle there, and who is talking to lay people? Who is taking this scientific data and translating it down so that it's understandable to the general public? Well, up to this point, there's been media, right? There's a new drug that's come out for this disease, and it's 20% more effective, like just boiling down these top line messages from a whole clinical trial, right? Just top line information. Doctors do it all the time. Oh, you're a perfect candidate for this medication because you meet the criteria. Not going into the whole package insert on the label, but just knowing that they can give the pertinent information that the patient can understand. Wellness influencers do this also to mixed success. They spread a lot of misinformation on social media, but people really look to them for supplement advice and weight loss advice and things that maybe are not evidence-based, but they are talking over the fence. They are making things understandable to lay people, which is why people turn to them. And finally, science communicators, which is now sort of an emerging thing in that we're sort of the same as wellness influencers in that we're both on social media, but we tend to steer more towards evidence and science and peer-reviewed publications and public health data versus, wanting to sell products like vitamin supplements and so forth. So things that you can consider to be talking over the fence. I'll give some examples. So really the bottom line is that you're simplifying complex science topics for lay people. That's the bottom line. That's what you're doing. That's the goal, right? Making science accessible to regular people. And that could take the form of you summarizing your own research for the mainstream, sharing information as an expert on social media. So you might not think of yourself as an expert of, that you would have anything that the public would find valuable, but you do. I am here to tell you that you do. Self-publishing your own blogs, writing editorial articles, and posting on Facebook. Like all these things are you talking over the fence to your audience. Live streaming, that's great. I'll talk about all these things later, but working with the mainstream media, providing expert commentary and correcting misinformation and countering it with good evidence-based information. And if you take one thing away from this talk today, I want it to be that you're going to start thinking bigger about what you can offer as a scientist, because you are in the middle here. So you're in the blue circle with your work and your science and your knowledge, okay? I think a lot of us scientists kind of discount all that we know and that all we've been trained to know, and we only think of ourselves as doing this one job and this one grant, and this is my focus. But you really have a lot more than that in here, right? So you are the center of this information ecosystem that you can offer people if you want to. I mean, obviously, it's not for everybody, but if you're on this Zoom, you probably are somewhat interested in it. So you could, these are some of the outlets that you can use. Traditional journals, this top box is what we're all used to, right? That's the goal, is to do your science and publish it in a traditional journal, which that is already a lot, I will say. That's not like, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, just publish it in a journal, but that's not enough. That's not what I'm saying. That is already a lot. And it's not easy going through all those review cycles and getting rejected, I know. But that's the path we're all the most familiar with. So I would challenge you to think about maybe social media, maybe mainstream media, maybe doing a blog or a podcast, maybe putting your research into a preprint before it's peer reviewed so that you could then let other scientists use it first, adding to that science community before it would have otherwise been accepted. So there's just lots of ways that you can think of yourself as sort of this information sharing person that's not a traditional pathway. So let's talk about some reasons why you might want to do this. So first of all, I'm a public health person, so you'll have to humor me for a second, because one of our tenets of public health is meeting people where they are. And if we want to make healthy behavior change, we need to meet people where they are and respect them as people. So where are people? They're on social media. So that's where people are. And the Pew Research Center has reported that in 2020 and 2021, about half of Americans are getting their news from social media. Now, we're not just talking like, entertainment news. We're talking all their news on social media. So this is where people are. If you want to get messages across, this is where you do it. You can be of service to people in your field, and I cannot underestimate this as an important thing that everybody on this Zoom is capable of. So these are two people that I think do a great job. I'm trying to give other examples in this presentation that aren't all me, but these are two of my colleagues in science communication that I think do a really great job. Jennifer Lincoln, Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, is an OBGYN. She is on TikTok and is incredibly successful just making content for young girls about like periods, about cramps. And, this isn't what she does for a job. She's delivering babies and performing surgery. She's not counseling young kids in her office, but she's thinking outside the box at how she can be of value on social media. And she's providing content using her training that, so that's what she does. Science Sam, also, she's got her PhD in cell and molecular bio, and she does these science quizzes that I get almost all the answers wrong, but they're really fun. She pulls in all different types of science questions, and kids love it. It's really fun. So these are two people that I think and again, she's not like, her question here is like, what's the thing at the top of your mouth that hangs down? What's it called? Right? That's not something she is doing for her job as a molecular biologist. These are just fun science questions that she's using her training to be of value to the community. So when I tell you I'm encouraging you to think bigger, this is what I'm talking about. Like, there's things that you don't even think are valuable to other people, but they are. You can build a community, and this has been probably the most surprising / rewarding part of my journey on social media, is that I feel like I have really built a community of people with my followers, and they actually make you better at what you do because they ask questions. Like, as a scientist, even though I'm on social media all the time, I will admit I am out of touch with what people don't know because I read so much. I'm constantly watching other people's content. I'm always cramming for media interviews. So I feel like my brain is always saturated with facts, but that's not the norm, right? So people asking me like, oh, I didn't get my first COVID booster, so I can't get this new one, right? And it's like, oh no, you can go. I didn't realize that was even a misunderstanding until I got that question like 10 different times. And I was like, oh yeah, we don't have the old one anymore, so just go get this one, So it's just the things people don't know that makes you a better creator because you're in touch with your community. And that's why really engaging with that community is important. You build relationships with other creators, and this is huge. This has been so rewarding to me professionally. I have written opinion pieces with other creators I've never met in person. I have written academic papers with people I have never met in person, done panels at conferences. It's been amazing. Just the people that you meet that are like-minded, cool people, that you can meet that are outside your institution. And as academics, we tend to only kind of meet people right in our same exact field or at conferences. And this is a really nice way to kind of broaden your academic contacts, because a lot of us creators have like, scientific academic degrees, work in academia, do research. So that's been extremely rewarding to me. And then also I was lucky enough to be invited to join these science communication initiatives through the WHO and the UN and so forth. So I get to participate on these committees, which are really cool. And, as a public health student, when I was I actually am an alumna of School of Public Health at UIC. Like, if you had told me at that point that I would have the opportunity to be working with these groups, I would not have even believed you, especially not for making social media content. It's just amazing. So I highly recommend it for the community aspects of it. It's been amazing. So you can disseminate your own research more widely. And this is an example of a creator that I think does a fantastic job at this. Way better than I do. I'm not very good at promoting myself, even though you'd probably be like, what, you're on social media every day. But he's a neuroscience PhD at UCLA, and he's constantly educating about the brain, about what he's doing. He's showing himself being experimented on. He's like, excited on the top right that his paper was published, and then he shared his paper, like, just really cool. And he's got a lot of followers because people really like how excited he is about his own research. So he's a really good person that, if, he has a compelling research area, which is cool anyway, but he's very good about promoting his own research going on in his in the lab he works in. One thing that's really important is we need to explain the nuance in data. So nuance in data is not explained in headlines. So like, for example, this headline says like Israel's data says the vaccine is only 39% effective, but people were freaking out. This is in 2021. And I was basically making a video showing like it's not 39 across the board. There's a trend here. And when you look at each one of the, when the vaccine was administered, it's 39% as an average, but not for every single person. So these are things that are not explained in the media that probably won't be explained any other way, but from a science communicator. When people start flipping out about headlines, there's almost always some nuance that's not being shared. And very near and dear to my heart, as if anybody knows me or my content, you know that dispelling misinformation was the reason I started to do this. And dispelling misinformation is important, not just about COVID, but there's misinformation about every medical field. There's tons of it, and I don't even have time to debunk it all. There's so much nonsense out there, but you can dispel misinformation. And as you can see on this survey, this is not just like talking about people that are like anti-vax or cuckoos. Like there's like 78% of people in a survey believed at least one of these most common falsehoods about COVID-19. So even people that are, pro-science and think, but they've just heard these nonsense things so many times that they think they're true. So it's really scary and it's very detrimental. And social media users are more likely to believe misinformation per these research studies. So people that get their news from social media are more apt to believe misinformation because they're bombarded with it. And medical misinformation is deadly, so we all can help. The more good information that we saturate the internet with, the better. So it's not like a competition thing, like, oh, there's all these new creators. Like, we're happy when there's new creators because there's more people in our army against disinformation. All right, so we are experts and we are all used to talking to experts, and that's what we are comfortable with. And when I think about my first videos that I made, they're so embarrassing because I started talking to the audience that was watching my videos like I was teaching my graduate classroom, at School of Public Health. And that is not, that's not the way you need to do things. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. Science literacy is one of the biggest surprises to me, was just how science communication with non-scientists had a lot of challenges, and the public was extremely vulnerable to this epidemic of misinformation because there was a very limited knowledge of how science actually even works. So I made a bunch of, as you can see on the bottom, like a bunch of very simple conceptual videos about science, to kind of help with that. So I could like tag somebody in this, like if somebody said like Fauci lied when he said we didn't have to wear masks, I would tag them in the like how science works video, like as we collect data, things change. And so anyway, there was a lot of this kind of basic science education before I could even like talk about COVID-19. Another thing is that people are on the social media and pretty much anywhere in the general public are very bad at assessing risk. So in my experience, like using another COVID example, is that people think COVID is very like almost safe, like the risks from COVID are perceived as low, like there's this 99% survival rate people keep talking about, and the risks from the vaccine, on the other hand, are amplified, like, oh my gosh, they're hiding all these deaths, and there's all the, all this nonsense. And so there's just this weird risk assessment problem that's going on. And it's like two things going on with the COVID example. One is this nature bias. And this, by the way, is very prevalent on wellness influencer pages. Man-made risks are always seen as more dangerous than natural risks. So something that happens naturally, like COVID, is safer and better for your immune system or something than the vaccine. So, or sunscreen is really what's causing skin cancer, not the sun. Like I see all this nonsense constantly, and this nature bias, it's huge on social media. Optimistic bias, also, everybody thinks they're healthy and young and that their own risk is less than it really is, or that it's less than other people's. So this is already a baseline problem that you're fighting against. Again, and I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but I just wanted to put this up to get your minds thinking about how people that believe misinformation, whether it's about COVID or vaccines or your field or anything, are not doing it for one reason. Belief in misinformation comes from all kinds of different things. Like we make decisions based on whatever information we already have on file. So if you already have biases one way or the other, that's going to drive what you believe in and what. So this is what you're fighting against. It's not like, oh, people don't like the vaccine because they're, whatever, fill in the blank. It's much more nuanced and much more complicated than that. And people know that who spread disinformation. So they have a series of techniques that they use to spread disinformation on social media networks. And I have a whole talk where I go through each one of these and explain it and how it works. But suffice it to say that this is what you're fighting against when you're talking to the public. So what we have to do as science communicators is build trust. So the co-epidemic of misinformation really led to distrust of public health science and medical recommendations, which is very unfortunate. And you will get, if you go on social media, you will get, oh, you're being paid by pharmaceutical companies for this video and all this other, people just automatically assume that if you're spreading health information that you're being paid by a pharmaceutical company or that you're somehow intellectually compromised. I don't even care anymore when people say that, but at first I was really adamant, like, no, I'm not. So misinformation, obviously, about anything, but my example that I've been using is like misinformation about vaccines. We have people that refuse every vaccine, and then there's a continuum of hesitant folks before you get to people like me who, like, the day the booster's available, I'm going, right? So this arrow in the middle, this vaccine hesitant population, like misinformation really causes those people to delay and be like, hang on, I'm not sure. We're not really talking to the people on the two extreme ends. But you can see this data from Canada on the right is that the willingness to receive the bivalent booster was inversely related to how much misinformation they believe. So this is a huge problem and it's costing lives. And science communicators really can build trust with this population. So what I do on my channels is I try to just be real. I try to just be myself. I think trust is essential. So I try to show people that I'm actually a real person. I talk about being a mom. I talk about my house. I try to share some of my hobbies like roller skating and scooters. I don't talk about anything like about my personal life, but it's nice for people to get to know you and like you so they can relate to you as a, if somebody is a mom that's hesitant about vaccinating their kids and they know I'm a mom too, and that my child's vaccinated, that kind of helps them relate to me and maybe understand that they can also make a good health decision. Another thing I do is I do share the evidence behind everything I'm saying. So social media does not have to be, frivolous or inaccurate or not scientific. I have a link in my bio that opens up to my link tree, and I have every link to all the studies that I talk about are there. So not everybody wants to look at it, but if they do, the evidence is there to back up what I say. All right, so here's the part you guys really came for. So social media, these are some best practices and tips that I have found to work for myself in my own, but honestly, I'm going to make a caveat that every audience is different on social media. So what works for me may not work for everybody, but I will try to summarize what may be a good place to start for you at any point. So anyway, just best practices before we get into it. Because we are academics working at an institution. So the American Medical Association does have guidelines, professionalism in the use of social media, which are really helpful and go through a lot of really good, I won't read them to you, but I recommend it if you're going to start just to peruse them. Really important, never violate HIPAA. Basically anything that's not okay for work is not okay on social media either. When you're talking about patient cases, just be really careful and just don't ever give identifying information. Speak on behalf of yourself, not your institution. Never make statements that UIC thinks anything or supports anything or your institution. Follow all your university policies and codes of conduct. Again, if it's not okay at work, it's probably not okay on social media. Never post about confidential or proprietary information. So like if you're about to file a patent for something, that's not something you want to post on social media, something like that. Or if you have embargoed data, not making a video about that. Also, your own confidential and private information you don't want to post on social media because people are weird on social media and they will look into your life and find things. And so if you can make a separate account for your science communication, that's probably the best thing to do. Also, always have a disclaimer on your page that your views are your own. And I circled mine right there. Just to make sure that people are separating your hot takes about things from you actually performing as a member of your institution. And I can't stress this enough, the internet is forever. So anything you put on the internet is going to be there. All right. So social media for science communication meets people where they are. It's a great modality to communicate quickly and accurately. It makes it fun to communicate good information. The cons are obviously attention spans on social media are really short. The algorithm-driven platforms are very challenging to deal with. And you do get harassed, especially somebody like me that posts information about vaccines. This slide just kind of goes through, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but I do want you to just understand and appreciate that every platform is different. So you won't have the same success with a strategy on TikTok that you would have on Twitter. It's a completely different platform, different demographics, and and I'll give a couple examples of this. So for example, this is my tips for really successful social media posts. First of all, you got to know your message, know what you want to say, and then know your audience that you're talking to. Like we were just saying on the last slide, the audiences are different. So then you want to tailor the message to the audience. So for example, this graphic here shows like who follows scientists on Twitter, right? And you can see here that like, over half of the followers for people on Twitter are other scientists. So you can put a lot of data and links to studies and complicated stuff in your tweet thread because people that follow you are going to be able to understand that. So that's okay. If you're putting that same message on TikTok, you're not going to want to put those same details in that TikTok video because you got people that are, in their teens and early 20s watching that don't have graduate degrees and aren't, you do have other scientists following you on there, but it's not the same kind of communication. So you want to tailor the message. Engage. You want to really treat social media as a community. So you want to reply to your comments. You want to really keep your audience engaged with your content. Constant evolution of what is working and what isn't working. And it sounds like, yeah, but no, you really do like almost on a weekly basis, see what's working and what's not working. Because you want your message to go out as wide as possible because you work hard on these kind of pieces that you put together. So if something's not working anymore, you don't want to waste your time. All right, so more tips. I'm not very good at this, so that's a disclaimer here, but you want to probably brand your channels. Like this dermatologist on the left, I think does a really nice job. Like she's goes by Dermontology. And every one of her posts has the same color scheme, and she's very neat and everything looks really nice. My page looks like a 6th grader did it, so don't look at mine for formatting or for branding. And then this content creator coach, social media coaches are really helpful to follow, and this one I recommend actually. She does the same thing where it's everything on her page is green and yellow, and she also has some really great tips if you're getting started with TikTok. Also, Canva is really good because it gives you templates to use. And then you can use apps like Hootsuite, where you can actually, if you're really organized, like more organized than me, you can sit down on Saturday and make your content for the week and then schedule it in Hootsuite to just post for you. I am not that level of organized, because a lot of my stuff is like, oh, this vaccine got approved and let's make a video, so a lot of my stuff is like last minute craziness. And again, engage. You want to be part of your own community. I hate when, big creators will post videos and then just like disappear, and you look through their comments and there's tons of questions and they never respond. All right, so algorithms, the engagement that you get on your video, or the engagement that you give, depends on how much you see content. So somebody making anti-science content is going to be shown more anti-science content. That's just the way it goes. So because of this, algorithm-driven platforms are really designed to keep you on the app, and that's why they keep showing you what they think you want to see. So it, just by the nature of it, it favors this sensational viral content over content that is real information, like what I would be giving, right? So misinformation goes viral because it's sensational. And the way the algorithm knows how to treat something is by these popularity measures: views, comments, likes, follows, numbers of shares, and watch time. So for Twitter, if you're doing a Twitter dissemination, people really like Twitter information in what we call threads. And so what you do is you start your post with a spool, like telling people there's more coming. And then this is one I did about when Justin Bieber had to cancel his concerts because he had Ramsay Hunt syndrome, and everybody was saying it was from the vaccine. And so I made this tweet thread just basically saying that this is a vaccine preventable condition that he has, and that it's not from the COVID vaccine. And so anyway, you just kind of do an intro to catch people's attention, and then you follow up with the data and the information. And people really like these on Twitter. On Instagram, we do science communication through these info slide posts. And this is one I did on whether, I actually had to make a info slide set on the fact that the vaccine does not shed spike proteins. Yeah, because that was a big one on Instagram. So you can put up to 10 slides in a carousel and write a really long comment. So this is what really works on Instagram, because people can share them to their stories. People really like this. TikTok is short content for lay people. And I had a TikTok in here, but it was crashing my presentation, so I took it out. But it's short content, provide information and a solution. Then, it's not a data heavy platform. You just get the message out there, and then they're going to scroll on. TikTok trends you've probably heard about. These really are fun, but most importantly, it really gets you in the spirit of the app and into TikTok culture, because TikTok really is like another world, and it is a community of creators, regardless of what your topic is. To compete with TikTok, Instagram and YouTube have had now their own products that are like mimicking TikTok. So Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. And honestly, if you take anything away from this for practical tips, this is the formula that you need to use. So I have 2 slides on this. This is the first one. So this is what my process. So I storyboard my concept, I shoot the video, and sometimes this number 2 takes several tries, many tries. Then you preview it, make sure it's okay, add your captions, your text, and then you share. That's the process, right? But this is how you actually do it. So you want to have a hook to catch people's attention. So my video right here, will I get monkeypox? Universally applicable to everybody. Everybody wants to know that, right? When monkeypox first came out. then you kind of build up, like, I'm going to show you the activities that are most likely, you know, whatever. And then number 3, the value. Then I went through all the activities, like trying on clothes in a store, low risk, touching somebody's clothes, low risk, giving someone a hug, you know, like all the, so then I worked my way up and gave them the value, the data that they wanted from the video. And then the 4th one, a call to action, like if you're at risk for monkeypox, go get your monkeypox vaccine, modify your behavior, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I do in my videos. Just make sure that you follow this formula, because if you don't catch their attention and build up their attention, your watch time will be really low and your video will get less reach. So then you can do stories. I'm going to kind of go quickly over this, but you can do stories. They last for 24 hours. And these are really good for, like, you know, late breaking news or something you don't want to sit down and make a video about, or pictures of your cats and things like that, you know, just really quick. It's only up for a day. Going live, I have used very successfully. You can live stream with your followers on most of the platforms, and it's a great way for them to ask you questions, doing live Q&As. You can also collaborate with other creators. So I do once a month, we do a First Fridays, myself and the woman here above me, Jessica Malati Rivera, who's another epidemiologist on Instagram. We do a First Fridays kind of question and answer session. And it's really fun. And you get to, you know, talk directly to your followers and answer their questions. Then there's blogging. I use blogging for, so this is really nice because I personally use it as a companion piece to my videos. So if I make a video, for a while, there was all this hysteria about polio, and that when that case was found in New York, and people were emailing me, asking me if they needed a booster for polio. And so I made a video, and then I wrote a longer piece that had links to data and things. So I use it as kind of a companion. Editorials, you can write editorial pieces about a unique viewpoint about some hot topic that you might have. And if you don't get replies right away, just keep at it, because you will at some point. And, you know, mine are all about vaccination. But so of course, mine are all lightning rod topics, but they, you know, whatever you are thinking about, just keep trying. YouTube, another one. I don't really use YouTube. I use YouTube Shorts, but you can do longer content on YouTube. And it's a really enormous platform, younger audience. Podcasting, you can start your own podcast, explore topics, in-depth conversations, and you can include show notes so that you can put the links to the data you just on your website to the podcast. So you can keep the evidence piece in there. So here's some tips on if you're invited to be on somebody's podcast, because this is more what happens with me. So reply to the email right away with a couple weeks of available times, because you're oftentimes, you know, there's probably multiple hosts, there's a producer person, and so you want to make sure everybody's time is accounted for. Ask for a list of topics. And, you know, you can check facts during podcasts. Like if you don't know something, just be like, hang on, let me check that, because they do edit these and you want to make sure you're saying things the right way. Don't overshare while you're recording, because, oh my gosh, these last on Apple Podcast Store forever. So don't say anything personal. Ask them to promote your social media accounts and share the episode when it comes out on your social media. And then for mainstream media, reply. This is totally time sensitive stuff. When you get contacted by the TV media, it's usually for like the next day at the latest. So reply as soon as possible to the producer. You know, share your name, your affiliation, exactly how you want it shared. Ask the producer if it's live or taped. That's hugely important. Test your equipment and your lighting. You don't want any problems while you're taping your segment, especially if it's live. Do your homework. Now, this picture is funny because this is an Instagram story I posted. It says, when MSNBC wants you on at 6:20 a.m. to talk about COVID news, and you don't know what they mean, and you're an overpreparer. So I have stuff everywhere with like information because I had no idea what they were going to ask me. So that happens to you and you just have to do your homework and go with it. And I ended up having to use like none of this, but you never know. So don't make up information. There's lots of ways you can answer questions you don't know. Like, yeah, it'll be really interesting when we get data to answer that question. We're all kind of waiting for that. Or, you know, you can think of ways to answer so it doesn't sound like deer in the headlights. Relax, be yourself. Make sure the background of your house is clean and there's no like people walking by or anything like that. And obviously dress professionally if you're on a TV interview. And then print. A lot of these are the same, but like this is like I added this at the last minute because I got this email last night and it was like perfect. It's like, do you have time for a super last minute Q&A? This was from somebody from Bloomberg and just had a question for a story that she's writing. And if you are a reliable source for these journalists, they will do this. They will reach out to you last minute. If you're reliable and provide them good information quickly, they will value that. So if you reply right away, do your homework, definitely if you're talking on the phone, you can pause to check for information. Sending the journalist links to things you were talking about during the interview is hugely helpful for their fact checkers. And, you know, some journalists just will send you an email like this person and just want you to write. And if you do that, write with your hyperlinked references, they love it because it makes their job so much easier. And even though like this person, I kind of consider to be my friend at this point because we talk all the time, like it's really important for me. This one's hard for me because I'm a talker, you know, I'm a very social person. So don't overshare with these people because they are a journalist, right? So avoid off the record conversations. And then you can thank me later, but keep a list of your press hits because making this ex post facto is very difficult. Okay, so if you have questions and you want to work with UIC on this stuff with the mainstream media, I have the lovely Jackie Carey on who introduced me, but for help reaching out or interacting, sharing stories, writing press releases, hugely helpful. She's a rock star. Reach out to her. These are the contact information. I think these slides will be shared with everybody.
Yes, we'll make sure everyone gets this information.
Okay, awesome. And so just in conclusion, really quick, overcoming imposter syndrome is probably the biggest thing holding you all back from doing this, right? Feeling awkward on camera, being nervous for media interviews, insecurity about your own knowledge is huge, and we all have it as academics. Opening yourself up to criticism, never easy, right? We don't even like presenting to our colleagues because you're kind of like, oh, they're gonna know so much more than me. But know that you aren't going to get it right every time. And I've been wrong lots of times on a very big stage. And, you know, you delete the video, you make another video saying, you know what, the other day I made a video and I had a couple of facts wrong. And this is, so listen to this. This is the right information. You can, nobody's perfect and you will make mistakes. And it's just how you kind of recover from them that really matters. And you are an expert and your information is worth sharing, and you should think bigger about what you can contribute to the community at large, because there's more to you than this lab that you're working in right now. You have a lot of information in your head. So this is how I like to, people that criticize on social media, this is where they live. I'm sure you've seen this graph before, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like everyone who's watched a YouTube video thinks they know as much as I do about infectious disease epidemiology. And so they come in my comments because they just watched a misinformation video on YouTube, you know, kind of challenging me. And, you know, their confidence is much higher than mine. So all of us as academics, we're somewhere on this slope, right? So our competence is really high, but our confidence is not as high as these people criticizing. So you got to keep this in mind when you start to get comments, because a lot of times the comments are somebody that's like maybe, you know, not even college age yet. They couldn't possibly have the knowledge that you have. So just remember that. And just to recap, that there's all kinds of reasons why you should go public with your science and why you should think bigger about what you can do, because it's a lot. And we all, as academics, we sell ourselves short and we have imposter syndrome, and there's a lot we can do that we're not doing. So I went a little longer than I planned to, but I can stay as long as needed to answer questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace, very much for all of that really helpful information about your experiences and the lessons you've learned. And I will maybe start with one question, if you don't mind, and then I think we can toss it over to Lauren to see if there's anything else that she might suggest in terms of, moderating questions or questions that she has. But I'm curious if you have like a baby step to recommend for people if they want to get started, but don't really know exactly what to do and now have a lot of information and hopefully better awareness of some of these things. What's the small sort of first step that people can take to maybe start getting more comfortable and seeing what would work for them?
Yeah, I would recommend. So I guess people's baby steps are different. So my baby steps were like not making videos and being on camera. That was like kind of the last thing I did. So making posts on Instagram and, people sharing them, making Twitter posts, making threads like that. If you start with that and start to generate a following, then you can also cross post to things like TikTok. You can say on your Twitter, like, hey, I just started a TikTok, everybody follow me there. You can start to cross promote your content. But, it depends on what you're personally comfortable with. If you're a TikTok person, but you're not comfortable speaking on camera, we have lots of actually MDs that just use like audio and do things like, they'll have a question above like, what screening should I get by the time I'm 40? And then just point, dun, dun, and then text pops up. And it's helpful, right? People like that because it's a good song, trending audio, good information. And, they don't need to say anything. So there's lots of ways you can get around whatever it is you feel insecure about at first.
All right. We had a couple questions come through the chat, and I think, a lot of them tend to theme around the time investment that people put into, getting started and getting familiar with these platforms. So the first one is, about how much time did it take for you to start getting comfortable using TikTok specifically was the question. Yeah. And then also a second question about how much time should someone dedicate to, this activity, getting things up and started on social media?
Well, that's a fantastic question, because even though a lot of my naysayers think I'm being paid to do this, I am not being paid to make videos on TikTok. So if people monetize their platforms, and a lot of people do, like when they reach a substantial following, they can start doing sponsored posts. They could start, partnering with brands to make content and things like that. I've never done that because I am a public health channel. And so I feel like part of that building trust piece, I didn't talk about monetization in this at all, but that's a huge part of content creation. I don't do it because I feel like it inhibits the trust that I want to have in my community. I don't want to have any kind of like reasons why people might think that I'm being paid to say anything I'm saying, because I really just want behavior change. But so that being said, it does require a time commitment, especially if you have a community that you feel a little bit responsible to. I don't make content every single day, but most days I do. So I could do a whole other lecture on how to manage the time commitment, but it can be substantial, and it isn't for everyone. And TikTok does take a while to, I would recommend anybody that's interested in TikTok to, follow some other science creators on there and just scroll and just get a flavor of what it is, because it is a completely different culture and app and stuff. So I would definitely recommend just being a lurker for a while and then kind of getting the hang of it.
And then one other question, and maybe you could touch on this quite briefly. You talk a lot about, imposter syndrome, and the way that we can be very self-critical. And so one of the questions was, I spend so much time thinking about ideas and making posts perfect that I kind of end up wasting a bunch of time and not posting anything. Do you have any suggestions to get over this?
Yeah, so I do the same thing. I was making changes to these slides until right before this presentation. So I don't know how much good advice I have in this arena, but I'm also a perfectionist and I'm really hard on myself, but use that, kind of flip that on its head, because if you remember that you're going to be harder on yourself than anyone watching your video, and most of the people watching your video, like even other scientists that maybe think something's wrong with your video, will probably contact you via DM instead of being like, why did you say that? And those are the only people that you really should care about what they think, right? Like I've had some things where people are like, I actually think it's like this. And, it's not exactly how you explained it. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, thank you. And but people that just make nasty comments and criticize me, I feel like I know more about this than they do probably. So, I just think that we are harder on ourselves than anybody else. So if you spend all this time making content, you should post it.
Thank you. And, we've still got quite a few people on the line, and I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. So I want to actually toss it out to the folks that are still on, if there's any additional questions that they have that they that haven't been addressed through the slides or some of the subsequent conversation.
I'm good on time if you want to take a few extra minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw the one pop up. That's actually a problem on social media too. The comment said we can all name an academic who we think steps outside their area of expertise. With COVID, we see a lot of clout chasing going on, like people like, I'm a COVID scientist and blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of like, what's that? Like, so yes, we see that on social media, unfortunately, as well. That's why I think it's really important for me to have my real name on things, that I, share things that I do in the media with my name. And I'm very transparent about who I am, so people can look me up and see that I really do have a degree and that I really do teach, and that, I think that helps with the trust, although it does open me up to more craziness, but I think it's worth it because it helps build trust.
There was another question that came through earlier, kind of about you talked a bit about the demographics of the types of people that you're engaging with on social media. I think, what is something in this question that we haven't covered is, your feel on the potential impact of your videos and posts. Have you been able to get a feel for whether or not you're actually making a difference and, for people's, understanding and conceptualization of research?
Actually, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I was actually gonna mention this during the algorithm slide and I completely forgot to mention it. So thank you. So because of the algorithm, we're sort of separated into silos on social media. Like I said, like what you like, you end up seeing more of those posts, right? So I feel like sometimes I get discouraged and think I'm talking to an echo chamber and that everybody watching my videos is just gonna, behave this way anyway and whatever. But then you really kind of step back and think about it, and every piece of education and every, you're arming your people that are watching your videos with information, with data for them to make good decisions for themselves and for their families. And those people are the ones talking to the people that aren't watching my videos. So people watching my videos understand why the vaccine is not shedding spike proteins, right? And then when their boss says that at work, they can be like, no, that's not true because blah, 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 because they watched my video where I simplified it for them. They're aunt who comes over for Thanksgiving who says that the vaccine has, something that hooks you up to the internet in it, they can watch videos about that and they can say, no, that's not true. So what you do, even though sometimes it does feel very much like you're talking to an echo chamber and it's a worthless job, what you do does have ripple effects, and it does help people, because I get messages all the time from people like my mom and dad went to get the booster because I showed them your video about how it actually does help people over 65, and so they didn't realize that, and now they're going. And so these are people that would not watch my videos on Instagram, right? But their daughter does. So it does help people, but it is sometimes frustrating to that point. That.
All right, thank you. So what I'm going to do is, we've still got some people on the line. I'm going to throw up an exit poll because, we are hoping to be able to glean some information from this session and see, what other information people might want to do a deeper dive into in the future. But I will also say I am more than happy to stick around and kind of continue to hang out with folks kind of post-conference if there's anyone that wants to ask additional questions. So Kat, if you're game to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm totally game. Is there anything else good in the chat that we should talk about?
So there was a question that came through about equipment and trying to make everything look polished. Some people have very, very professional looking videos.
I am not one of those people. Like, if you watch my videos, they're very much like, I'm just talking to the camera and I just use this. That's my equipment. When I'm talking to the media and when I'm talking to you guys right now, I have nicer equipment, but my TikTok videos, no. And for Instagram info slides, I just use Canva. Nothing fancy.
And Canva is, I don't know if you mentioned this, the basic functionality is free, and then you can pay to have some additional access to professional and open use images and templates. Any other questions from the participants on the line? Again, we'll open the floor up, so feel free to jump in.
Everyone else on here fell asleep. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't know if I was able to, I don't know if I have the ability to remove the spotlight, or I'm doing it the wrong way.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Well, yeah, appreciate the folks that have responded to the exit poll. If you haven't already done so and you want to, throw up some thoughts that you might have on deeper dives that we can do, please feel free to do so. Jackie, any parting comments on your end?
No, not really. I would say thank you very much to Kat for her time, and thank you for the wonderful questions that we got, and to everyone for filling out the exit poll. We do hope to consider hosting additional topics like this. So if you have feedback, we're trying to figure out what the best topics and approach would be moving forward. So we really appreciate the exit poll, and pay attention. There's going to be a survey as well coming out. So any thoughts and feedback are very welcome, and we very much appreciate the time that it would take to fill that out. Hopefully it'll be very, very brief, but know that it will be greatly appreciated. So that's it for me. So if there's nothing else, thank you, everyone.